Hi everyone, my name is Danielle Ohl and I'm giving a presentation today on the consequences of website inaccessibility. So first, why is website accessibility so important? Well, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities actually came out and said that access to information and communications technologies, including the web, is defined as a basic human right. And this is because website and internet access is integral to many aspects of our lives today, including education, employment, government, commerce, healthcare, and recreation, just to name a few. It's essential that the web be accessible in order to provide equal access and equal opportunity to people with diverse abilities. Some additional reasons why website accessibility is so important. Just at a very basic level, it means that people with disabilities can feel socially included. This also would apply to older people who have mobility, dexterity, visual, and hearing issues, and people living in rural areas or developing countries, which often experience expensive or low internet bandwidth and limited time or resources to access. There is also a pretty strong business case for accessibility. If your website is more accessible, it appeals to a wider customer base, meaning you'll get more customers, meaning you'll get more money, which is what businesses want at the end of the day. There are also some pretty strong SEO benefits. Search engines read alt text from images, which can help optimize a website to show up higher in search results. And overall, it just creates a better user experience if a business's website is accessible. So let's just go through a brief history of website accessibility law in the United States. Firstly, in 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, was enacted, and this was done to prohibit discrimination and ensure equal opportunity to people with disabilities. It applied to state and local government services, employment, commercial facilities, transportation, and places of public accommodation. And these laws can be enforced by the Department of Justice, or the DOJ, and through private lawsuits. Next, in 2003, the DOJ issued a document that created voluntary action plans for accessible government websites. And this was just kind of a list of different things that governments could do to make their websites more accessible, but it was not mandated. In 2010, the DOJ issued a document saying they were considering revising ADA regulations as they relate to the internet, and they also sought public comment on this issue. They were seeking public comment on whether the DOJ should adopt the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG 2.0, as standards for website accessibility for entities covered by Titles 2 and 3 of the ADA. Next, in 2014, the DOJ said it received over 440 public comments and that they were reviewing them. They also said they planned to follow with the publication of Title III Notice of Proposed Rulemaking in the third quarter of fiscal year 2015. However, that did not happen. Rather, in the fall of 2015, the DOJ decided to extend the time period for the development of the proposed Title III Website Accessibility Rule and include it among its long-term rulemaking priorities. They said they expected to publish the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking during fiscal year 2018. Next, in 2016, the DOJ requested additional public comment regarding this issue. And in 2017, the Trump administration placed the DOJ rulemakings related to this matter on the inactive actions list. And at the end of 2017, early 2018, the DOJ actually withdrew the ADA compliance for website access regulations that they were considering. And since then, U.S. plaintiffs and attorneys have kind of taken advantage of this confusion because there are no regulations, and more than 260 website accessibility lawsuits were filed in 2016, with even more in 2017. Next, I'm just going to take you through a few details of a couple cases that I found interesting in particular. The Winn-Dixie case of 2017 was the first known federal case of its kind to proceed to trial. And what happened was a plaintiff who was blind could not access 90% of their website with his screen reader. And following a 3-day bench trial, Judge Robert Scola ruled that a website was in fact a place of public accommodation and as such was subject to the ADA. that the website was not sufficiently accessible, and the burden that Winn-Dixie quoted of $250,000 to remediate their website was ruled not an undue burden, so they had to move forward with fixing their website. Injunctive relief included a requirement that the website conforms with the WCAG 2.0 criteria. Third-party vendors must also comply. They had to place a statement on their homepage concerning its accessibility policy. They needed to provide training to all employees who write or develop code, and they must test a website every 3 months for conformity for the next 3 years. There was also a Netflix case in 2016. The claimants, which were the American Council of the Blind, the Bay State Council of the Blind, and a private citizen named Robert, contacted Netflix to express concern regarding the screen reader accessibility of Netflix's website and applications, and the inavailability of audio description services. They came to an agreement instead of going to trial because it was in their mutual best interest to resolve all potential claims, and a settlement was reached in order to avoid the costs and the uncertainties of litigation. Terms of the settlement included ensuring its website complied with the WCAG 2.0. They also, for their mobile app, must comply with the BBC's mobile accessibility standards. They must provide audio descriptions for popular titles in their library, and they must make their website and mobile app more accessible to those using screen readers, and they must train their customer service reps to handle audio description technical issues. So what are some solutions to website accessibility? I'm just going to run down the list pretty quick because we're all familiar with a lot of these. Obviously, alternative text for images is important for screen readers. It's great when all functionality of the website can be completed from the keyboard for people who can't use a mouse. It's also good to provide audio transcripts or captions for videos. There should be sufficient contrast between the foreground and background so that people with visual impairments can better read the text. Easily identifiable feedback was an interesting one that I hadn't thought of. And we've all used a form where we've ran into an error and seen error message 123, and we have no idea what that means. So instead of that, the error message would easily spell out what was done wrong and would be highlighted in some form. Creating responsive websites that respond to different viewport sizes is also important. And providing controls for content that automatically starts is a big one. We all hate videos that autoplay, but imagine having autism or ADHD or some kind of sensory disorder and arriving at a website that immediately assaults your senses with visual and audio noise. It's best to let people choose when their content can start. Just a few examples of an inaccessible and an accessible website. First, the inaccessible one, and I must warn you, this is the worst website I have ever seen in my entire life. One moment as it clicks through, my computer's a little slow. So, as you can see right off the bat, this is awful to look at. It has no layout, there's no grid used, there is barely any white space, no context for anything really, so you have no idea what you're looking at. There's no alt text for the images. They use multiple font colors, multiple font sizes, different types of fonts, and also, as you can see at the top, there's moving images you cannot turn off, and if you scroll all the way to the bottom, oh look, there's also more moving images that you can't get rid of. It is also not responsive, as you can see, because you have to drag the bar way over to even view the entirety of the web page in a regular laptop screen. So let's now look at one that is accessible, and I chose the BBC. And it's such a relief to see this after looking at the other website. There's a lot of white space used. There's a great contrast between the text and the background. There are no auto-playing videos, so users control exactly when visual or audio content starts and when it ends. There is alt text for all the images, and it is responsive. As you can see, as I make the screen smaller, the website does respond to the different viewport sizes. And lastly, what kinds of tools can be used to gauge the accessibility of a website. I found a lot of great tools on the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tools list from the W3C. And on that list, I found a tool called the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, or WAVE. And you can pretty much input any website into this tool, and it'll tell you what some of the good things are as far as accessibility and things that can be fixed as far as accessibility. I decided to put my company's website into it because I manage our website, and I just kind of wanted to see what we're doing good and what we're doing not so great as far as accessibility goes. So, as you can see, there are a couple errors, there are some alerts, there are a couple features that we are complying with as far as accessibility, and you can just kind of dig into it and see exactly what the errors are, what the alerts are, things that you're doing right, and it really gives you a very detailed look at how you can make your website more accessible. It also evaluates the contrast of your website. As you can see, that's something that we can definitely fix on ours, just to make sure it's readable for people with visual impairments. So that is it for my presentation. Thank you for your time.